I will open the Tuesday City Council meeting. Need to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. And then we'll go straight to our consent. Is 3 meetings minutes. Do you have any questions? Minutes.
I have one, and it has to do with the April 5th meeting, and it is right under consent agenda. And it says Risley requested a revision on March 8th, first page, to add Sam to the list of volunteers. What I actually wanted to have is that he was mentioned as an award winner, not as just being there at the meeting.
I didn't actually list any of the award winners in that. So would you like me to list all of the award
Sure,
winners?
that'd be
Because
helpful.
That wasn't actually in the original minutes.
Okay, sure,
Okay.
that'd be nice.
Okay.
That was not in the minutes, or it
No,
was?
it wasn't.
But the award winners, wouldn't that be nice to have them in there?
This, no. It wasn't announced in the meeting, and these are minutes of the meeting. So,
But they were handed out.
On these minutes of this meeting to reference the award winners from the meeting from March 8th.
that'd be a better way.
Okay.
Thank you.
They were handed out.
Okay, anything else? With that, we need some motion.
Move to approve the minutes of April 5th with the noted change, April 12th and 19th work session and the joint work session.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll jump into our public comment section. I have one name listed on Zoom, Hans Lindstrom. Find it.
Hello.
Hello, Hans. Go ahead, please.
Oh, finally. Okay, am I on?
You are on.
Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Hans Lindstrom. Our residence is at 1956 Pacific Street. And we're adjacent to the proposed paving area on the west side of this area to be paved. I'm speaking in favor of the Public Works recommendation. There are 2 key items. And with this paving project, stormwater runoff would be much better controlled, especially in this area of steep slopes, as most of you probably are aware of. Also, due to the high car traffic, especially during the busy seasons, the gravel grades cannot be maintained to help with the stormwater control. The paving project would mitigate that effectively. Therefore, I ask that you approve the Public Works recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on Zoom want to raise your hand? Not seeing anybody there. I'll check again after, but I'm going to ask the audience in the house. Anybody here wish to make a comment? Wait.
Mayor Stidle, members of the council, Mr. St. Dennis, My name is Wade Corkendall. We live in 163 West Jackson Street. I have sent you an email, which I apologize for the misspellings and so on, but getting through and doing emails is not one of my great accomplishments in life. I barely can figure out how to get through a computer. I'm here tonight for one reason, and that is the TSP program. And without a lot of to do, it seems to me that the city of Cannon Beach has a lot on its plate to accomplish. It has had a survey of what all of the people in the city would like to have and so on. But that survey has gone bye-bye and hasn't really been dealt with. And so we move on with not getting things done. The new replacement for this structure, the city hall and the police station, has been a long-standing thing here in Cannon Beach. It has been reviewed and had committees and had meetings and had discussions about whether it be in South Winds or be over by the RV park. And lo and behold, be right where it is at the present time. Unfortunately, a lot of people say it shouldn't be at the place it is at this time. It's still a tsunami zone. And if tsunamis are something to be fearful of, it should be deeply considered before a lot of money is wasted putting the city hall and the police station in this position. And so what I'm really coming down to is that this city needs to have more done toward having the city hall, having the water system more functional, having the sewage system have the repairs and things that it needs before it accomplishes or attempts to accomplish anything else. These are important things that are important to all people that are in business or living in the city or have second homes in the city. What isn't important at this particular point is the TSP plan. I think that the city council should lay it aside until the more practical and important things get dealt with and proceeded with, and then the TSP can be brought up. There are so many things that are at issue with the number of the citizens of this city, including the fact about 8-foot wide paved pathways. And there's already a nice gravel pathway going from Monroe Street down to the lagoon area. And similar things. Pathways are nice, but we don't need bike ride paths. We don't need a lot of those kind of things done. And there's certainly probably not the money available to do them anyway at this particular point. Particularly if you haven't even started to the point where the city hall and police station are involved. The other issue is I would suggest that the city talk to other places that have had similar buildings done in the past, because it seems to me that starting at $17.5 million is an awful big money waster, and it can be done for less than that. Now, I'm not a contractor, that leaves that to others, but it just seems to me that that is a tremendous expenditure of funds for what is really needed. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I would really think that you would listen to what the citizens are saying about the TSP and put it on the back burner. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Anybody else? Nancy?
I'm Nancy Littell, I live at 3631 South Hemlock, and I'm here to talk about the four-way stop in Tolavana. I like it so far. I haven't seen anybody try to get smacked there, and I really like that all the flags and things are up. Kind of change pattern ahead, be aware, be aware, be aware. I really like it. But I really am especially glad to see that don't park between these signs, where you don't try to get killed getting out or into that parking lot anymore because you can't see. Thank you.
Eric was trying to Box 97. I saw agenda item 12, the tree thing was relating to the TSP. And so it kind of made me look through what's in the TSP draft right now. There's a handful of things that are concerning that I've heard through the YouTube replays of the open houses that have been discussed. But one thing I haven't seen discussed is the concern that I have about it with the electric scooters. There's a bunch of different mentions through it about allowances for the electric scooters and setting up the mobility hubs for those, for charging stations for those. I would like for all of you to consider looking at the way that those scooters are used in other cities, especially larger cities, the trash that they leave, the scooters themselves being thrown into the Willamette River down at the Portland waterfront. I have concerns that people are going to be using them to go out on the beach and fall and injure themselves because they're not made for using on the beach, or just leaving them out on the beach. And those lithium-ion batteries that are in them are really, really bad for the environment if they're just left out there, thrown into the wetlands, thrown into the ocean, wherever they end up. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if I'll be able to attend the other meeting, but I figured I'd get my voice out today.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else in house? Rusty, did we have a hand up?
Yeah, we.
Linda?
Hello, my name is Linda Rosman. How are you?
Good, go ahead.
Yes, I'm following up on the comments of Wade Kuykendall with regards to the TSP. My concern as somebody who has come to Cannon Beach since, oh gosh, I was 2. That might have been 1968. If anybody can remember what Cannon Beach looked like in 1968, I hope you can. Lots of trees, lots of rocky roads. Nothing was paved. You could wander everywhere and everywhere in that city and know that you were safe. And coming up, I would really like for the council to consider this new TSP plan that is before them. I have been allowed to view it. There's a lot there. There's more there than I can digest in one setting. And it's for 20 years. 20 years, which means that this today is 2022. So 20 years from here on out, if my math is correct, would be 2042. I'll be lucky if I make that year. That's how old I am. And I think many of the council members themselves would like to think, okay, when we think about this amazing community that we are part of, and by the way, I am Wade Kuykendall's daughter. My name is Linda Rosman.
He's smiling big.
That's great to see. I can see his forehead, his rear head. But going back, when we like to think back to what we all know, looking at you, council members, whether you're originally from here, born in Cannon Beach, but we come to love this place. We come to acknowledge that this is home. For some of us, like you, Sam, we remember what it was like. And I think going forward, we have to think about what we want to create. We cannot allow, and yes, it's great to have outside voices share their opinion of what would work for parking, of what would work for tourism, of what would work for hiking, of what would work for this. But I think we have to step back, and I think we have to reflect on really, truly, are these the values of our community? Have we asked our community members to look at this plan? Have we asked for their input? My father brings up several good points in that you just passed 2 bond measures for City Hall and the fire department. What is that going to look like? How are we know how they will be funded through bonds, but going forward, what will that look like? We have a sewage problem that has been brought up. What will that look like? What will that cost? Those immediate infrastructure needs take precedent over this comprehensive transportation planning plan that is from an outside source in Portland that has no ties within the community. So when we look at this plan tonight, which you all will look at, I would ask you to keep in mind, based upon the current needs of the city of Cannon Beach, and what those look like in 5 years, and how does that plan fit in 5 years, and how can you afford it in 5 years, and what does that mean to the residents of Cannon Beach living in 5 years with regards to their property tax or short-term rentals or whatever that may be, and how is that going to be funded? Because you as council members have a fiduciary right and obligation to this community not to overstretch those funds, not to overstretch for something that is not obtainable in the long term. I would hate to see Cannon Beach become bankrupt based upon this idea of this transportation plan when there are so many other needs in the forefront of this community that need to be addressed. And I would ask the council members to take that into consideration tonight, looking at this plan, is that we step back, we reflect, we think about it as a community. We ask community members for input. We have town halls for input. Because there are many in that community that have voices that have not been heard. And they need to be heard because that's what makes Cannon Beach so amazing and so important. Not just to my parent, that is me as well, that will someday, although part-time, will be a full-time residence. And I want to be thoughtful about the future of Cannon Beach and where it goes. And I would hope that the council members would be that as well and not take this plan on in its full scope, but to break it apart into pieces. Who are we here for? Are we here for tourists? Or are we here for the people of Cannon Beach? The tourists will come no matter what. But at the end of the day, it is the people of Cannon Beach who live here. This is their community. They have a right to be part of it. They have a right to create what it is without the thought of the tourist, because they only come for one day. But you all, just like I hope to be, live here full time. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, one last check for hands. Room on the board. Okay, we are done with public comment. Thank you for those who commented. We will move into our first item, which is a public hearing. Okay, hearing consideration resolution 2213, a resolution of the city of Cannon Beach adopting findings to support an exemption from the competitive bidding requirements for the City Hall Police Station project. This is a public hearing for the purpose of considering findings to support the CMCG contracting process for the proposed new City Hall Police Station project. Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have direction to move forward with construction of a new city hall, police station. And the recommendation is the same as what we made when we started the Cannon Beach Elementary project. And that was that the construction delivery system that we should use would be a construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC. That is different from a normal design bid project. And the design bid, an architect works independent of the contractor, signs the plans, puts the bid documents together, and then the contractor comes in and then bids on those documents. And then the lowest responsible bidder will be the one that will be putting the building together. And that, and that has worked for a long time. The construction manager, general contractor is a little bit different in that the construction manager, the CM part of the CMGC, the construction manager comes on a little bit into the design phase. And so when the construction manager is involved, they would, I'm sorry. Yeah, the construction manager would is hired for a fee, and there are two fees associated with that work. The first fee is they come in and they're the construction manager, and they work with the architect on putting together the plans. They're the ones that are ultimately going to become the general contractor, and so they've got a vested interest in any decisions that are made for constructability, schedule, all those kind of things. So you have the person that's actually going to build the project involved early in the design, and they're paid a fee for that. And then the product from the design phase is that the construction manager at this point and the architects put together a series of bid packages. And then those bid packages are bid out, and then whoever the successful bidders are would then work for the general contractor, because they take over the general contractor responsibilities. They don't have an incentive to try to get change orders or to delay the project. Their incentive is to get the project done. They've been working on those plans since the beginning. And so, and even when I'm saying there's no incentive, if there are change orders or something with that, they're still just paid the fee. And so we know what it's going to cost, for us to have an architect through there, or I'm sorry, the contractor through that time. So I've used this successfully on same scale projects, I think 5 times, and it has always worked out. And so that's my recommendation. And part of the recommendation is that you have the people that are going to build it involved in the design. And that's really the only model that I'm aware of that a city can use. Now, for you to move forward with that, you have to approve the CMGC method. And then we will be hiring a CMGC, and we'll be hiring an architect under that. So that's what the public hearing is about tonight. And Ashley, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it pretty
Okay.
well. So Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office, this is the process that we're using tonight is required by state law, that there's draft findings, you allow a public hearing on the exemption from the public contracting bidding process. And then after you hear from the public, you make a final decision on those findings.
Great. So at this time, pursuant to ORS 279C3355, we'll open the public hearing in order to give any interested party a chance to comment on the draft findings for an exemption from the competitive bidding requirement. Is there any interested party wishing to comment on the draft findings for the exemption competitive project? I'm asking the audience if there's anybody who wants to comment or question about what we're doing here. Oh, you have to come up.
Just curious, would you say about the fees? Are the fees included in that estimate for the whole
Yes.
17.5, those fees are considered in that estimate at the same time, or is that additional to the 17.5 fees that will,
It's included.
it's included? Okay,
Yes.
that was my question.
And if there's anybody online, I don't see any comments.
Microphones. So we can hear.
Sorry, I'll try and speak up. Again, last chance. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I will close the public hearing at this time and we will move for consideration. Council, do you have any comments or questions?
I have a question, just a very technical question on the findings of fact. Let's see what page is that? Page 3 under technical complexity. It says, I don't quite understand what this means. Because the CMGC process requires close coordination between the architect, engineers, and CMGC builder. It will help to ensure that modern construction materials and techniques can be matched to the existing buildings. I guess what I'm confused about is the existing buildings will be coming down. So what does that mean? Are you saying that what we have here, that it can be matched to the kinds of areas that we have here, or I really don't understand what that means.
Nancy, I have to apologize because this is actually a model that's been used elsewhere. And I should have caught that said the existing building, because I believe that was the case. And so, in fact, it's not so much that they'll be matching the existing building, but they will be aware of, current techniques, what materials are available, that sort of thing, based on their other general contractor experience. But what you caught is we're not tying to this building.
Okay.
So I apologize.
This is the text that we used for the Cannon Beach Elementary project. So that's a whole different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so.
Any other comments, questions? And I need a motion.
Move to adopt resolution 2213, a resolution of the Cannon Beach City Council adopting findings to support an exemption from competitive bidding requirements for the City Hall Police Station project, declaring such exemption and authorizing a process to award construction professional contracts in accordance with the construction manager, general contractor, construction delivery method.
Seconded. Jennifer?
Council President Bennett,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvie,
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Mayor Stidell.
Yes. Okay. Another step taken for that. How many more to go? Two, yeah, right. Okay. We move into our resolutions. Item 3. Resolution for the purpose of rescinding the city's general COVID and pandemic emergency declaration.
I actually think this one is mine. So Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. So at our last workshop on April 12th, the council discussed the status of the city's emergency declaration pursuant to COVID-19. What we had discussed is that back in spring of 2020, the city council passed an open-ended broad emergency declaration to give the city broad authorities to respond to the pandemic. And that emergency declaration was open-ended until such time as the council considered the underlying conditions giving rise to the emergency had rescinded. So at the last workshop, we opened the discussion of whether or not the council believed that the underlying conditions that gave rise to the original emergency declaration were still in effect. And we discussed a bunch of different aspects of it. We received some information from Jeff Adams and from, I believe, Rick Hudson regarding the stages of an emergency. And one of the stages of emergency is response to the emergency and getting back to normal. We also discussed that the emergency impacted different industries differently. And one of the industries that was hardest hit by the pandemic was the restaurant industry, because they were forced to close down dining for extended periods and then limited operations. And then ultimately, one of the things that the city did to respond to the pandemic was to allow extended overflow dining for restaurants. That came at considerable expense to restaurants, having to invest in all that infrastructure and construct it. So what we had discussed is that the city has also been watching some of the variants that have been coming up. The latest was Omicron and then a subvariant from Omicron, watching it with some anticipation of whether or not we would ever enter into pandemic conditions again, and hopefully we would not. The direction that I received at the end of that meeting was perhaps that the original conditions giving rise to the pandemic had changed, but some of the conditions are, or some of the industries are still feeling the effects of the pandemic, specifically the restaurant industry. So what I have put forth with help from Jeff Adams and Rick Hudson is a two-step approach. So the first resolution is to rescind our original emergency declaration. So the broad authorities delegated to the city under the original COVID-19 emergency declaration would be rescinded. But immediately in its place would be a new, more limited emergency declaration. So you'd still be under a limited emergency declaration. However, it would be specific. The powers would be specific to the restaurant industry and allow for that overflow dining to continue through the end of September. I'm sorry, to the beginning of September, or extended if necessary. As a note, if any of those COVID-19 variants do become an issue in the future, you can always reissue your original emergency declaration that extends to the entire city. The issue with restaurants and the restaurant industry is that it's very difficult for them to go back and forth quickly because it involves, tearing down and putting back up infrastructure. So the second, again, the more limited declaration still declares an emergency for the restaurants and allows them to continue doing their overflow dining till at least Labor Day. And then if you don't take any other action, the emergency declaration will automatically sunset at that point. So if there's no questions, and I can get to that in a moment, it is a two-step process. So there's a first step is voting on the resolution to rescind the original one. And then the second is voting on a resolution to adopt the second emergency declaration. I think that is all I have. Any questions?
Question? Mr. Mayor, I have just one point I'd like to make. This is been an experiment. We've had outdoor dining for a while, looking to continue it through like Labor Day. If council wishes, we will put an item on a workshop to discuss whether or not you want to continue it or even consider continuing the outdoor dining after, I think it was September 5th, which is the day after Labor Day, because at that point it will go back to the existing code and it's not an allowable activity. So if you would like to have further discussion about outdoor dining, just let us know and we'll put it on a workshop. I want to let you know that once it sunsets. Done.
And if we decided to do that, it would require a public hearing.
Sure.
Establish an
It
ordinance.
would require code,
Go through that standard process.
full code change.
There's no life.
Sorry?
There's no life.
With
Sorry.
that,
It's hard for me to hear you and you're all talking so quiet. This is, how do these people hear you whenever you're all whispering? You know what you're saying. I don't.
Mhm.
You know what you need? You need two things. You need a microphone in front of every one of you. You need a good heated discussion and common sense. And I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving.
Ben, we have microphones right here.
Okay, with that, we have two motions. I don't hear any questions or stuff. So the first motion, do we have a first motion?
I moved to adopt,
I'm sorry, I saw a hand go up.
I just want to say, I might not agree with exactly how she said it, but she's right. I'm hearing about one half of what you're saying.
I'm trying. We've gotten so used to not having audience. So I agree. We need to speak up.
There are three of you who are particularly bad at it.
I know.
And it might help if you stood up when you spoke, like we.
I don't think I'll go that far, but I'll try and speak up. So with that, the motion.
I move to adopt resolution 2214 for the purpose of rescinding the city's general COVID-19 pandemic emergency declaration.
Second.
Seconded. Any concerns? Jennifer?
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Mayor Stidle.
Yes. Next one.
Move to adopt resolution 2215 for the purpose of approving a Cannon Beach limited emergency declaration to extend overflow dining allowances for restaurants during the COVID-19 recovery period.
Second.
Jennifer?
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Mayor Stidle.
Yes. Okay, Ashley, go ahead with those. Thank you. We'll move on to our next item. Consideration of a resolution authorizing a loan. I'll let Karen explain this one.
Evening. At the workshop session, April 12th, the council discussed the original, apologize. In the 2021-22 fiscal year, the City of Cannon Beach Public Works Department budgeted several capital improvement projects utilizing low-interest loans as a revenue source. Utilizing these loans, the city can obtain funding for an improvement now, pay over 20 to 40 years instead of today's residents paying 100% of the improvement that has a long useful life. On March 2nd, 2021, the city applied for a loan from the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund to move forward with phase 2 of the water resiliency project. The project is replacement of the lines between the springs, the tank, the water plant, and down to the RV park distribution area. The goal of the water resiliency project is to be able to distribute drinking water to the public within 72 hours after a large-scale earthquake, such as the Cascadia subduction zone event, and to build a hardened water system backbone that mitigates earthquake damage and allows for accelerated recovery. On February 14th of 22, the city was approved for a loan in the amount of $3.2 million through the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund for phase 2 of the water resiliency project. This loan is eligible for $515,000 of principal forgiveness at an interest rate of 1% for a 30-year term. The city has budgeted debt services for this loan. Staff recommends adoption of the resolution and approval of the signature card for the purpose of authorizing a loan from the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund by entering into a financing contract with the Oregon Infrastructure Finance Authority.
Thanks, Karen.
Welcome.
Okay. Any council comments or questions? Then I need a motion.
We'll move to adopt the resolution and approve the signature card for the purpose of authorizing a loan from the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund.
Seconded. Seconded. Last minute concerns?
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Mayor Stidle.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, on the Public Works staff, and that includes when Jen was on Public Works staff, and now she's also doing it as a recorder. We've got some amazing deals in trying to go ahead and finance these projects that we've got. And so I want to thank them.
I thank council for their support.
Thank you, Karen.
Good job.
And that segues right into our next proclamation. Karen, do you want to introduce it?
I'm sorry.
You want to introduce the proclamation?
In 1960, the American Public Works Association has sponsored National Public Works Week across North America. More than 30,000 members in the US and Canada use this week to energize and educate the public on the importance of public works to their daily lives, planning, building, and managing and operating at the heart of their local communities to improve everyday quality of life. This year's National Public Works Week theme is Ready and Resilient. The City of Cannon Beach would like to acknowledge its Public Works Department for the hard work and dedication given during any hour of any day when needed to support our city. Staff recommends that council adopt the proclamation.
We have a motion.
I move to adopt the proclamation 22-06 National Public Works Week.
Second.
Jennifer.
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Mayor Seidel?
Yes. Okay, there goes. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainability and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of citizens of Cannon Beach. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our cities, water supply, wastewater treatment, parks, beach access, and public buildings for our citizens and visitors. And whereas it is in the public interest for our citizens, civic leaders, and children of Cannon Beach to gain knowledge and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their community. And whereas the American Public Works Association has celebrated the annual National Public Works Week since 1960, I now therefore be resolved that the Common Council of Cannon Beach does hereby proclaim May 15th to the 21st, 2022 to be National Public Works Week, Ready and Resilient in Cannon Beach. We urge citizens to recognize a substantial contribution to our public works teams. I'm going to do that one. We urge citizens to recognize the substantial contribution of our public works teams makes to protecting our city's health, safety, and quality of life. Passed by the Common Council today. So, thank you. Karen, wherever she disappeared. Okay. Loud enough. Tried. Our next proclamation. Jason, want to introduce it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Representatives from Emergency Medical Services are asking citizens or cities across the country, including the city of Cannon Beach, to adopt a proclamation to designate the same week, May 15th through the 21st of 2022, as an Emergency Medical Services Week. Purpose of this endeavor is to increase public awareness and recognize the importance of emergency medical service teams. Emergency medical service is a vital public service and is important to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical service providers. We do have Jason here from the fire department representing the fire department. And as most of you know, we have 9 of our 11 employees at the police department are at least emergency medical responder for about.
Chief, don't we have Eric too? Volunteer. Eric, you're a volunteer, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Want to point out that he's here also.
Yes.
Thanks, Eric.
Good, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt proclamation 2207, Emergency Medical Services Week.
Second.
Jennifer?
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Mayor Seidel?
Yes. Brandon, you're in full voice tonight. Would you be willing to read this?
Happy to be the voice of reason.
I don't go that far.
For the purpose of designating the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, the Common Council of the City of Cannon Beach, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as Emergency Medical Services Week, passed by the Common Council of the City of Cannon Beach this third day of May, 2022 by the following roll call vote.
Thanks, Brandon. Very good. And sticking to that theme, our next item, intergovernmental agreement. Jason, do you want to introduce?
Yes. So a little background. Cannon Beach Rural Fire Protection District has been in the process of rebuilding their water rescue program. And as part of that, they've been working with us and our lifeguard program, just strengthening that partnership that we have with them. So it really helps with the lifeguard program. After several discussions with the fire department and police department, we'll work together with Attorney Ashley to complete an intergovernmental agreement, which we have before you. It allows the fire department employees and volunteers to provide lifeguard coverage before and after the typical lifeguard season. So we've been noticing the last several years that some of our rescues are happening before the lifeguards are actually on the beach because they're still teaching. And so this will give us some time before the actual lifeguard season and after, but it will also allow them to supplement the city's lifeguards during the summer on days that we're short or need extra personnel on the beach. So they will be reimbursed an hourly rate for lifeguard services provided that will be billed from the to us.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I think this is another example of where the two departments are working together more and more. And this is just, like I said, an example of what's before you.
Questions, comments, motion?
I got a question.
Yep.
To either of Bruce or Chief. Does this have anything effect on the current budget cycle?
No, well, go ahead, Jason.
It's taken care of. We have it in this year's budget and next year we budgeted for it as well.
Great.
Yeah.
The issue is covering this year and we got it.
When did the lifeguards get here and start to see it their season?
We've already had some of them working and prepping and actually training with the fire department. They've been doing water training down on the beach. In fact, this weekend they did some, but they will officially start mid-June once school's out. There's still several that are teachers or in school. Yeah.
Jason, I'm a little bit confused here. It says the Cannon Beach Rural Fire Protection District will supervise all their personnel while performing duties under this agreement. So I guess what I'm confused about is you're supervising the lifeguards under your care and the fire district is supervising the employees under its supervision, but is there any time when the two supervision responsibilities will merge? I mean,
When we do have our lifeguards down there, especially our head lifeguards, they'll be in charge of the situation if something is deemed necessary. But if they're working ahead of our lifeguards being down there, they'll be working directly from the fire department. They'll be using our equipment and our beach rigs, but they'll be working directly with the fire department.
okay, so there's not going to be in times of an emergency or chaos, there's not going to be a confusion as to who's supposed to be giving the orders
No.
or any direction or
And if
anything.
it came down to that, where there was a rescue or not, it's usually the fire department and the police department doing a joint command and having one word going out instead of confusing words.
Okay.
They work like this all the time. It really does work that way.
What, in total confusion?
Chaos.
Very good. Thanks, Jason.
I move to approve the CVRFP intergovernmental agreement for additional lifeguard coverage.
Second?
Jennifer?
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Mayor Seidel.
Yes. Thanks both to the fire department and police department. Cooperating. Item. The EVOO concern. Bruce, you want to?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob and Lenore Neroni are the owners of EVOO in Cannon Beach. EVOO charges a package price for the meal, beverages, and the experience of leisurely watching their food being prepared. Because of that, it has not been a simple matter to establish a price for the taxable portion, which would be the dinner, of the package price in terms of the prepared food tax. City Council and staff have had discussion with the Neronis. At the April 12th work session, a proposal was made based on Bob's calculations that $93.75 would be the value and would be the reported taxable amount for every dinner served by EVOO over the next year, and that amount will be adjusted annually. Based on that discussion, staff is bringing you an administrative order to memorialize the agreement for EVOO to charge $93.75 per person. That's one issue. There was a second issue, and that EVO collects 100% of the cost of the experience at the time the reservation is made. Recently, they have been taking and being paid for reservations for dining dates after July 1st. The council agreed that the money collected before July 1st would not be taxed, independent of when the meal was consumed. There was a precedent with this when a TLT was increased, tourism lodging tax, and there was an exception where it was the tax. If the reservation was made prior to the tax date, they wouldn't have to pay for it, even if the time that they were going to be spending on the key or spending here would have been after that date. So recommendation is if council's amenable to the proposed proposal discussed at the workshop, motion to approve administrative order 22-02. And that'll be signed by the mayor.
Any questions? No motion?
I move to approve administrative order 22-02.
Second?
Jennifer?
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Mayor Seidel.
Yes. Okay. Moving right along here. Next item, City Hall RFP. Bruce?
Yes, sir. We talked a little bit earlier about the CMGC model for the City Hall Police Station project. The next step to move the project forward is to go through the selection process for the architect engineer and initiate the construction manager, general contractor RFP shortly thereafter. Both selections start with the issuance of a request for proposals, or RFP, that must be approved by the council. Because of the cost and scope of the City Hall Police Station project, the City Council is required to approve the RFPs for the architect engineer and the CMGC before they can be issued. At this time, we're asking that the architect engineer RFP, which is essentially the same as the one that was successfully used for selection of the architect for the Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation project, be used. There are fewer details in this version, in that the project is well-defined in the facility program document, and that will be part of the RFP. And the critical dates in the process will be filled in once the approval has been received from council. The part of the reason for needing to do the dates at a later time, we have 3 RFPs that still need to be done. They're all 4 months long. There's all kinds of steps in them, and we don't want to trip over ourselves as we move forward. So that's why we can't give you dates until we actually have approvals. It's important the City Council approve the architectural RFP, and it has a long lead time and a requirement to get the project started. If the RFP were to be approved in May or May 3rd, we still would not have an architect on the project until July or August. Are there any questions?
I noticed there's a correction that needs to be made on page 5, page 5. The paragraph that starts, the already completed facility program, down below, it says the new facility will and house the police department. I think it's a little confusing. I'm not sure what that means.
Is it from the same paragraph? I don't have.
That's within the same paragraph. It's
Yeah, that's me again.
I think we just need to take out the word and.
yeah, is that what it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Nancy.
Other questions, concerns?
I had a question on page 16. Bidding phase. I'll just read it. Bidding phase, this is where the bidding for the subcontractors submit their proposals based on the contract drawings. I didn't understand really what that says. This is where the bidding for the subcontractors submit their proposals. I need an explanation of what that's trying to say.
Yes. And what it's trying to say, and I have to go back and read it myself, but what it's trying to say is that is when what will happen is the architect will go ahead and do the design, working with the CM portion of the CMGC. And then their product is a series of documents that will be bid on by subcontractors, because we already have the general contractor. And so that's a milestone that they're talking about, that's the point we will send out the bids for the subcontractors. That make sense, Mike?
Yeah, I think I understand the intent of
I
that.
think the way I said it is not correct. It doesn't, or is not helpful.
I have one other question along those same lines. On page 18.
Can you give a number?
It's number 3.4.6.
Okay.
Not so much a question as a comment. The second sentence says, this is a key responsibility of the design firm and will be monitored regularly by the city. The next sentence says, this is a critical component of the construction administration phase and a key responsibility of the design firm. This will be monitored regularly by the city. Sounds like those two sentences are saying the same thing.
They are. It's making a strong point on that. That's one of the problems that you can have in a construction project, is the contractor will say, explain this detail. And if that gets lost, or if it takes 3 weeks before somebody can get an answer, that's a problem. And so in my experience, the owner has to track those at the same time to make sure that those things are actually happening.
Okay, so you're just saying it's their responsibility, but the next sentence says it's critical.
It says it's critical, and then I think it also goes on to say that the city will be monitoring it.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest things that can go wrong in a project.
All right, that's my only comment.
Anybody else? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the City Hall Police Station architectural engineering request for proposals.
Second.
Good. Jennifer?
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Mayor Stidham.
Yes.
We've seen two similar requests from staff on this. They will both be RFPs for the construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC. With this selection, we will have both of our architects.
Okay. Next item is Karen, so specific paving request.
Several of the property owners located on the dead end section of South Pacific Street, just past Center Street, reached out to the city staff on March 22nd. They requested permission to pave the remaining approximately 120 feet of the unpaved portion of that street at their own expense. South Pacific is currently a paved street that dead ends down a steep slope, ending with a beach access point leading to Haystack Rock. Drivers are required to make a U-turn once they reach the dead end to exit the street in the same direction of which they came. Per the Cannon Beach Road Standards Mini Code 12.34.090, property owners may request to pave their gravel streets. As required in the city ordinance, the requesting property owners have received approval from 2/3 of the surrounding property owners before obtaining a quote from a local paving company and submitting the paving request to the city staff. City staff conducted a detailed evaluation to determine if paving would benefit that area. The review considered the current infrastructure in place and if there are any pending repairs or replacements scheduled that would require cutting of the proposed new pavement. Additional evaluation included the number of undeveloped lots that remain on that section of the street that might require cutting for future utility connections. There are no water or sewer repairs scheduled or necessary for this area. Storm drain improvements have already been made by the city as well as the private homeowners over the past years to try to mitigate water runoff from the steep slopes above. With this section being gravel and the number of cars that travel this area, it is difficult to maintain the proper crown on the gravel street to successfully control and direct water runoff in that area. City staff feels that paving this remaining gravel area would help further control surface water runoff. Recommendation is because this section of road is difficult to maintain, staff recommends that the residents be allowed to pave the 1900 block of South Pacific Street at their own expense.
Questions or concerns? Okay. Do you have a motion?
I move to approve the paving the 1900 block of South Pacific Street with the expense to be paid by the property owners making this request.
Second.
Jennifer?
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Mayor Stidham.
Yes. Okay, Karen. Next one is the Water Resiliency Project.
Yes. And this is associated with the loan that we spoke of earlier. The next step would be to issue the RFP. And on March 2nd, the city applied for a loan from the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund through Business Oregon to move forward with phase 2 of the water resiliency project. The project is replacing the lines between the springs, the tank, the water plant, and down to the RV park distribution area. The goal of the water resiliency project is to be able to distribute drinking water to the public within 72 hours of a large-scale earthquake, such as the Cascadia subduction zone event, and to build a hardened water system backbone that mitigates earthquake damage and allows for accelerated recovery. Business Oregon has already reviewed and approved this RFP. It is similar in style and structure to the RFP for phase 1 of the same project. If council is ready to move to proceed with the RFP, an appropriate motion is in order.
Questions or concerns?
Well, this was one of the highest priority projects identified in the master water plan that was put together several years ago.
Definitely.
And I think frankly, waiting for funding, way to fund it. And with the effort you guys made, we now have a way to fund it. So thank you.
Motion?
I move to approve the RFP for engineering, design, and construction management services for phase 2 of the water resiliency project.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Jennifer?
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benfield?
Yes.
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Mayor Strida?
Yes. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a 5-minute break so Jeff can get prepared for his hour-long presentation. Are we up?
Yes.
We are up. We're live. Okay, our last discussion is going to be entitled as a tree discussion. We're going to have as a presentation by Jeff. And I'm going to read the background. Well, first, go ahead, read the background. That was, go ahead.
Oh, for the background part?
Yeah.
Okay. The May 10th joint work session, the city council will have an in-depth discussion of the planning commission. I'm sorry, am I in the right item?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Regarding the adoption of the draft transportation system plan, or TSP. In preparation for that discussion, there have been many comments made on social media that the TSP project will negatively impact the city's trees. Staff will be presenting information in an attempt to correct the record in advance of the May 10th discussion with the Planning Commission. Jeff?
And Jeff?
All right. I thought you just wanted a PowerPoint. That's the only reason. But thanks for having me. And I first just want to read from Mayor Seidel's. Perhaps I exaggerate. Try and imagine, go back to 1960. What would a resident of that era who was concerned about their community then say if they saw what it was like now? Would today be a shock, perhaps as much of a disbelief as when we see old photos of back then, but in the opposite. Time to own up. We did wrong with good intent rules. Time to do what we can to make good. Trees mean more today. Time to make rules work in line with who we are. So that was from a recent post, and I'm here really in response to some comments that have been made out on social media about the transportation plan and trees, and it was even mentioned tonight. And so I wanted to just kind of correct the record and bring people to actually read the document. Okay, I know. I've been spending a year trying to get that, but that's what we're trying to do. Let's get the people to the CanonBeachTSP.com website and read the document. So here is a picture, historic picture from that 1960. Okay, around that time period. I've got another one come up here in just a second. But, you know, there's a few things I just want to point out. The amount of trees, but also the amount of development. And one thing, since I've arrived, we've seen a rise in development that's frankly off the charts. It's 3 times more than when I came. And so construction, you can ask John Coaster, you can ask David at Tolovana, ask any of them, and they'll tell you this is, some amazing pace of construction and development right now, not just here, but across the country. So looking back at those 1960 photos, here you can see up in my area, look right there at Sunset and look at the development, look at what existed then, look at the tree coverage all the way downtown. So by the book, the first thing I have to do, being a code geek, and that's what we're getting ready to go into, is that this is a perfect time to also have this discussion because the 2 of your major projects are coming to a fruition, Cannon Beach TSP, which will be at next week's work session, but also code audit, which we're continuing that conversation. But when somebody calls me about trees, this is what I refer them to, and this is what we refer to when we administer the Cannon Beach's Chapter 1770, tree removal and protection. One thing I want to point out there, purpose in section 10. A, the purpose of this chapter is to establish protective regulations for trees within the city in order to better control problems of soil erosion, landslide, air pollution, noise, wind and destruction of scenic values and wildlife habitat, and protect trees as a natural resource which establishes the wooded character of the city. B, the intent is not to prohibit the removal of trees completely or to require extraordinary measures to build structures. Rather, the intent is to stop the wanton and oftentimes thoughtless destruction of that vegetation, which has a beneficial effect on the value of property and on the city in general. And so when somebody comes in, they're looking to develop, this is often the first thing that we'll give them. It's a brochure that's also available on the website and just walks everyone through the tree protection process. And so if someone, first thing a lot of people call up, they say, what about, someone's pruning? You have to get a permit to prune. You do not have to get a permit to prune trees in the city of Cannon Beach. You cannot top trees in Cannon Beach. That is the one thing that's truly prohibited by our ordinance. If you are going to prune and you're any of those 4 under that second paragraph there, then yes, you have to prune by the arborist standards. That's general arborist standards, and we also have a copy of that out on our website. So, but to remove a tree, you must have a tree removal permit with a tree removal report prepared by a certified arborist. So if somebody comes in to build a new home or do any kind of ground disturbance, in other words, they're adding on to their home, we say you need to get a certified arborist to do a tree report for your structure and what your plans are before we will consider it. And then, there's other reasons for removal, such as hazards or solar or immediate action with an imminent danger. That's the only one that I can truly walk out there and say remove right now without any problem. Now, even if they do that, they still have to get a permit and turn that in within 7 days and go through the tree removal process. And so there's 2 forms that 2 types of kind of tree removals. It's the public tree removal, which is for the right-of-way trees, and the private, so on private property. Now, a lot of people don't know what the difference between the 2 are, so I'll touch on that in just a second. But if you're looking to remove something in the public right-of-way, here's an example of a lot here, for instance, the green there that says private property. That's the lot, that square there where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 X's on there for 5 tree removed. Out there in the front, there's 1 to the left under the public right of way towards the street, between the travel path of the street, paved surface or the graveled surface of the street and the private property lot line. And so If you're going to get something removed out there, you go through a public removal process. It's explained there in 1770-31 there. And it says that they'll have to go before a public notice. And that public notice goes out to people surrounding them. It goes posted in City Hall and the post offices. Now that's different than the private side. So if somebody comes for the removal on private property, they don't go through a public notice process. It goes directly to administrative review. And from that, it's to the administrator's discretion, my discretion, to have the city arborist review it. And you'll see over there on the left in the red one, they have everyone reviewed by the city arborist. But there's many that don't go for the city arborist review in our process. That is a may, not a shall in our current language. And for various reasons, there's lots that don't require that. For instance, ones that are right in the middle, like those right in the middle of the future home site. And then that administrative decision's made. But for every one, an appeal can be made. So that's the appeal section of our ordinance, saying that any removal decisions can be appealed to the Planning Commission. So in discussing the difference between the right-of-way, the public side of things, also parks and the preserve, that's public property as well. But those lots, those things in the white triangle, white rectangles on the right where the home sites are, those are your private lots. That's where you get a private tree removal permit. Those things over on the left, see the orange and the green and the blue, that's water infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure and sewage infrastructure. And that's one of the other reasons why we have to take care of where we place trees, where we remove trees, and where when someone's building and siting a home, they have to come and meet with both Public Works and the Development Department to where that infrastructure is going to be accessed from. So for that example, here's the example just to show you what we face every day. If somebody comes in and this home was originally placed closer to, does this have the little red thing, that top thing? Yeah, oh, that's cool. Okay, that right there is a 58. Yeah, I'm going to do that more often, actually. That is the, oh yeah, I got to hold it. So that right there is a 58 or 56 inch spruce, okay? On this private property, the rest of them, I think, total of, let me see if I go to that next one. Oh, wrong, I went back. Okay, this shows you a little better. If you go back to that, what I had, you'll see that these kind of, oh, wrong one, sorry. These little rings here, that's the computer generated canopy drip line. This kind of shows that I've done in detail. Now, the green ones are trees that are on site that the owner that wanted to build this new structure, owner wanted to keep or wanted to keep as part of, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 on-site trees that they wanted to keep. That big red one, the 56 inch spruce or 58 inch spruce, that's also one they wanted to keep. But when they tried moving it forward, which is what this is the second plan that they presented to us, showed, you'll notice the covered porch area in the front. This right here, that intrudes into the 15-foot setback. So when I told them, emailed back and forth on this, talked to them on the phone, I said, well, we can permit that, but you'll have to go through the Planning Commission. And so they said, well, do I have to? No, they don't have to do that. They're not required to do that by anything in our ordinance, but we would, it's an option. So they asked, well, what does that entail? Well, you got to pay a fee. You have to wait approximately, a month to 6 weeks to go before the Planning Commission. And then you have they have the ability to say yes or no, and we can give you those records and on past setback reductions. And so they considered that. They went back and forth and they decided that they were going to have to remove that big tree. And even, even the arborist said, even if this was to be moved forward, this might still be in jeopardy failing with the construction of this home. So these are the things that we waive with each one. It's not that property owners come in here, and I think it's being said often that they're not in our thinking the way that we want them to think, or they're not. No, these people came with the intent of saving as many of these back here, these trees that they could. That's why they originally moved not a very big structure, actually, if you look at it compared to a lot that are in the city, or especially lately. So they tried to save. You'll see that the ones that remain are in yellow, that are right away or not on their property, the canopies that still remain. And I want to highlight those, the canopy structure of these that still remain. The black X's are the ones that were moved for the structure. So this is just to give you an example of the daily requests. One of the reasons I also wanted to talk about is that Mike Bates, one of our planning commission members, wrote this article, A Tale of Two Tree Cities, USA's in Hipfish Monthly back in December, I believe it was. And it's available online. It's a great article. Mike's a great member of our planning commission. We discussed this presentation, and he's fully on board talking about the tree ordinance because he wants to see the tree ordinance strengthened. As you can see from his, Cannon Beach tree ordinance reads much like Issaquah's, talking about Issaquah, Washington, using many of the same concepts, including minimum tree densities, permitting requirements, and replacement of trees. But if you were to place the two ordinances side by side, you might conclude that the Cannon Beach ordinance is rather light on detail. Well, you know what that does to a planning commission, community development director? He puts them side by side, okay? And I just want to tell you, side by side, when we put the Issaquah next to the Cannon Beach and the Lake Forest Park, another one mentioned in our work session last week, here's what we get. Trees required per 5,000 square feet. Cannon Beach requires 4 trees of minimum. Issaquah requires only 2 for 5,000 square feet. Okay, Lake Forest Park requires a 28% canopy coverage, a little bit different. But I might recall you, if you go back here, that's probably about 28, 30% canopy coverage that still remains on this one after taking out even the big one. Okay.
Going the wrong way.
Oh. Okay, and so landscaping removal, so that some people come in and they just want to remove trees as part of landscaping. Cannon Beach, if it's under 10 inches, a tree can be removed for landscaping purposes, but it must have a replacement tree. Okay, in Issaquah, if you can take out 2 per year without a permit. You don't even have to have a permit to take out a significant tree. Okay, 4 total over 5 years, as long as you maintain that minimum 2 per lot, 5,000 square feet. Okay, Lake Forest Park, 2 or fewer significant, you got to get a permit, but 2 or fewer significant, doesn't have to be an arborist review on that. 1 landmark within 3 years. And a landmark tree in theirs is something like 30 inches, around the 30-inch mark, I think. We can verify that. But administrative modifications allowed. This is one thing that we talked about, like that example that I first gave you. If I would have come back with him and told him, well, you can do a setback reduction of, say, up to 50% of the setback through an administrative process, I think he would have probably done that day. But if he would have had to go through the planning commission, pay a fee and do all that, it's a different thing. It's 50-50 chance and everything. It's not an objective criteria. It's not something that we can do. Administrative modifications allowed in Cannon Beach? None. There's none. Okay. So that's the only thing I can say. Well, you can go before the planning commission. Issaquah, Washington, they allow up to 50% meeting certain criteria. Lake Forest Park, Washington, they don't have a strictly administrative, it's a hearing examiner though. And so we'll talk further about all that here in just a second. So here they are side by side with ours. Okay, so that minimum tree density, if you're interested, you can also go to the website. The beauty of the modern age is that all of this is available with a click of the button, going to these things, reading them, comparing them side by side, just as Mike suggests. Okay, so Issaquah, minimum tree density, like I said, look down there, single family lots, too significant per 5,000. Lake Forest Park, like I said, 28%. But here's the remaining coverage, just like I said, now with that gray of on the existing canopy, that would be probably 28, 30%. I'm just eyeing it, but you know, so that it's equitable to everything that we've suggested. Issaquah and Lake Forest Park on that maximum tree removals. Here's where you get that language about how many you can do it with or without a permit in their jurisdictions as compared to the landscaping removals for ours. We happy for you guys to read through these if you have as much fun as I do reading ordinances. Administrative discretion, the other one I just talked about. Now here's the thing that I want to point out, because we can learn from all of these. Every ordinance, the way they shape the ordinance, I'll just mention that Issaquah is about 40 pages long in their landscaping and tree section. So there's a lot of good things in there we can learn from. Same thing with Lake Forest Park, which I think is over 20 pages. Ours is probably equitably 8 pages or less. But Lake Forest Park has some interesting things that we'll point out and we'll get to when we get to some recommendations going forward. But Issaquah, their tree retention policies are there, but this is where they allow the modifications to tree retention requirements up to 50% there under 18-12-1385, I believe it. And then Lake Forest Park has this thing called, they start with tree removals prohibited for what they call viable exceptional trees. That bumps you. So if you want to remove this thing called a viable exceptional tree, which we'll talk about in a second, then you have to go through an administrative process called a reasonable use exception. So we'll touch on that here in a minute. So just to make note, yeah, I did the 1-for-1 or 1-to-2, and I think ours is fairly strong. It's not subjective. It's not what I think we hear all the time. And I made some notes on the last 3 or 4 public hearings from the Planning Commission and the City Council saying that, you know, it's just not being administered properly, or it's subjective. It's not subjective. It gives me no right to tell someone you can't take that tree down. Okay, so it's not true. It hasn't changed. That's what it says. So we'll replacement trees 1-for-1. That's what we require. Now, the difference here is that we do not require, if you have over 4 trees per 5,000 square feet on your lot, say you got 20 on that lot, right? And we get them all the time with 20 trees on that 5,000 square feet. And so they need to take out 12 to build a house. We don't ask them to replace because they still have 8 trees on that lot. And so it says a -12 number in the score sheet. It doesn't look great for the city under those numbers, those metrics, but that's what it says. And that's how it's treated because they have the right to build there. And we don't require, like I said, for them to replace that in our ordinance. So by the grapevine. So this is the real reason I'm here tonight. It's not to talk total policy, but there are things in our tree ordinance, and with the code audit coming up, we have a perfect opportunity to make some suggested changes in the tree ordinance. And so I do not read social media. I have no Facebook. I have no Snapchat or Instagram or anything else. I don't do that. That's not me. That's not something I even pay attention to. But when it's brought to me and people are pointed out, those in the know talk about the transportation plan getting talked about because it demands that we remove trees, I have to respond to that. I feel that's my duty to do that as staff. And so a recent post here, and I'm taking directly from this. They pointed, they went 1, 2, 3, 4 down through 10. I'm going to go point by point because I want to show you that your tree ordinance responds to these things. It's not that it doesn't respond to it. why, I think the quote from the person that wrote this said that, it was only leaning towards the tree or the creek, and that's the only reason it came out. No, we had an arborist review of it that was buckling our multi-use path there, and the crown was not viable, and so they were taking it down. And it's an arborist report. That's what we require. And so that's the reason it's down. Number two, the question that they said, from the most recent of the 3 old growth trees cut down on Ross Lane, there's 5 projects on Ross Lane right now. I live on Ross Lane. 5 projects, building projects on one street. Okay. And so this tree was forced to be taken down. It's in the footprint of the building. And so we don't require that they, keep it. There's no language in ours that says we keep it. And so if it's in that, and then it goes on, that number 3 says, number 3 says branch stripped off ready. And then they ask about, what about replacement trees? Or we're still waiting for replacement trees. Replacement trees come in after a project's done. And these are examples of some of the replacement trees just recently put up in town. So we asked for a 6-foot tall replacement tree on single family homes. So here's what I'm getting to on 4. So number 4 says the possible trees that would be removed if the city's TSP plan is approved by the planning commission, passed to the council for their vote of approval. The plan high priority to pave an 8-foot wide sidewalk up Spruce Street from First Street to Monroe Street. Take your measuring tape and see how many trees would be removed by the sidewalk. It's someone estimated between 18 to 21 trees, which is being built for tourists to have access to a neighborhood north to south. I mean, that would scare me. It would, but that's not true. Okay. I think this is where they're getting it from. And this is our old Parks and Trails Master Plan. It's not even the TSP. Please read the TSP, okay? It's not.
It's straight from the TSP.
It's not. It is not.
Copied and pasted.
Show me where it
It
is.
was in the March draft.
No, it's not. And so that's what we're saying. It's not.
Straight from the TSP.
It is here it is. It's not there.
And which draft?
And the March and the April are both on here, and neither one is, it's not true. Please do. Please send me the exact quote because
Paste exactly from the quote.
and in each one of the quotes and the page numbers you say are not even there. They're not. So this is the problem we're having. It's just
smoke and mirrors.
It is. It's smoke and mirrors that's happening here. And so page 5, removing the branches of this amazing tree with reported disease now being questioned by concerned citizens. Here's the second arborist report. This is the boring report showing tree ring rot. Okay, and so this is what it looks like. See that dark area of the ring? That's what that eventually does this, which does that, taken from the exact same lot, another tree ring rot that explodes those trees. I don't know if you've been up to the preserve and seen some of those that have been tree ring rot and exploded and collapsed, but this is what happens through it, an arborist report. Okay, so number 7, let's keep going. And so number 7 says, March version would create a trail for tourists to reach Hemlock from Spruce Elk Park by creating a path that would remove the trees and vegetation behind drag fire ground. Just not true.
It was in the March.
It's from the old I have it right here if you want to look at it. It's this.
The one that was sent out to the committee.
It was never contemplated. It's never been there. I mean.
Jeff, just continue your.
Yeah, I am. I'm not worried about it. And so number 8, read the document, please, everyone, read the document. And so,
which document?
and so number 8 says, the continuing city efforts to remove trees from the presidential spruce forest. This is at the end of Madison where the city owned, planned to put the huge 17.5 million city hall. Now there will be an 8-foot, there's not one mention of an 8-foot sidewalk in any of the TSP. We do not mention paving anything. And if you read this, south of the this is page 77 of the document. South of the downtown segment, the route would include the construction of hard packed side paths. See that gravel side path there of that multipath right there? That's what we're talking about. And much like this hard packed side paths that we have throughout the city. And it says side paths would be constructed at grade and could be delineated with permanent striping or with hard packed materials like compacted gravel or turf. Pit figure 34. At grade drainage could be constructed where pooling or flooding issues have been identified by community members. Side paths are cost-effective alternatives to traditional sidewalks, are relatively easy to construct, and are appropriate walking facilities in a village context. Where shoulders are too constructed for the construction of side paths, improvements would be limited to signage and pavement markings to alert drivers, to pedestrians and bicyclists in the existing shoulders. Shallow pavements, and it says the exact locations of these side paths would need to be investigated further by the city to access potential right-of-way impacts and constructability issues. In other words, as all of these plans, just like Mike said about the RFP for the water or the recent one that's just before you, RFP phase 2 water resiliency project, these are master plans that are 30,000 feet level, right? The next thing that if you choose to go one route, use one of these tools or go to you want to put this priority first and you want to do this project, you still have got to go to a survey. You've got to go to that 10,000 down to the 1,000 foot level, and you got to get the details before you go forward. This is simply suggesting that a range of options are open. The Spruce Street and the multipath using side paths are the option that's the preferred option right now. But when it gets down to it, you're going to have public opportunity and public input to go forward with that. So 8 and 9 continues arborist report. If you look down there at the bottom at the notes, this was identified 6 years ago that this is a immediate, we need to get this done. We need to get this out. It's a danger tree. And the arborist report, 10 clear cut of Van Buren, another one of those projects where here it is. This is what you're faced with. And so that tree at the back, that one right there, back and forth conversations, these emails with him to get him to move or get them to move this and attach it. Can you attach this garage? Didn't want to. And so we can't force him to under our current code or the property owner. And so how could you, what could you do to make these ordinances better, or at least take the first steps toward making, if you want to make it strengthen the ordinance? Well, I've listed out a few options here and we'll go forward with them. So first off, like I pointed out with Issaquah and Lake Forest Park, they further granular definitions of trees. So if, for instance, they have, Issaquah has hazard trees, protected trees, public, significant, specimen, and each one's got different, definitions and ability or what they're, the parameters of what's protected. In Lake Forest Park, same thing, this exceptional tree language is the key with theirs. but then they also have significant trees, street trees, viable trees. And so the first thing is I would at least define ours as a legacy tree, which means any tree at the DBH that is over 30 inches. So at breast height, something that's 30 inches, make that considered a legacy tree, okay? Second, change the TPZ. See the Lake Forest Park, they have what's called the critical root zone, which is close to our TPZ, but it's the same thing. Instead of it being 2 feet for every inch of diameter, it should be 1, because what happens with that 2, it's too big and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It doesn't protect the tree. So something that we can work with better is the TPZ, and that's more common of what you see in that language. 3, allow for a 50% setback reduction administratively approved through a type 3 development permit. So the person would still come in, they'd still have to get a permit, and that's notice to the surrounding landowners. But it gives me the opportunity to say up to a 50% reduction that they could save that legacy tree, like that one instance that we just showed. Legacy trees shall be required to have a city arborist review. So our current language says the city may seek independent expert opinion. Well, I say change that for if they're trying to remove a legacy tree, that it requires a city arborist review. Other possible revisions are, let me go back. So what I would call construction and, wait a second. Okay, so construction and public benefit incentives are tiered. So if we go back to this right here, which is Lake Forest Park. Lake Forest Park has this thing called an exceptional tree, and it's those sizes over there on the left. You see the 36 ranging from around 36 to 42 inches for certain types of trees. And if those trees are viable, so it would be similar to our legacy tree, right? But what they say is they go ahead and prohibit any removal of those viable exceptional trees. Now, to remove a viable exceptional tree, they have to go through that reasonable use exception. So I called them up and I said, really? So you're going to save every one of your trees that's over 36 or 42, whatever that type of tree, you're going to require them to go through a reasonable use exception? And the guy said, Community Development Director for Lake Forest Park, well, we've had that since 2018. We've only had one time that it's had to be used. I said, I've looked back the last 3 that have come before me. We would have to use them for 2 of the last 3. I said, can you send me whatever you have on that? He said, yeah. And so they used it for 1. I can also get that information to you if we decide to do something similar. But what the thought is that they make them go through this reasonable use exception. Now, he says that they're going through some ordinance changes, and there has been some that want to take it smaller so it affects more trees, right? And he said that he would advise against that himself because he thinks that it's working out fine. But anyhow, this could be also an incentive, what I said, that we could use going forward. So at an administrative level, we would do that 50% reduction, like I said, but for a commission review, if they want to save a legacy tree and it's within their within their building footprint, and they could save a legacy tree, they could go through the planning commission and get, if they save that tree, then they would get a floor area ratio of 600 square foot and keeping the same lot coverage. And so give them that bonus. So if we, so that's what I'm saying, through the code audit process, this is the kind of thing we could look at and say, this is a public benefit. This is what we want. We want to be able to say in a fairly objective manner that they're wanting to save this tree. They can go through this process, save that tree and get a floor area ratio bump, if we're deciding to use that floor area ratio as a thing. So something like that, the first example we would have, they could save that tree and place it. The second thing, which is, crazy that I think that we do this for the public trees, but we don't do it for our private side trees, posted notice. I mean, first off, I don't know how many people understand that through e-permitting, you can find out what trees are being, what tree permits are done, sign permits, tree permits. We post them in our e-permitting, and you can look them up by address through our e-permitting website. And this is Lake Oswego. And this is pretty much, a lot of jurisdictions do this. So if we notice through surrounding landowners and post it at the post office, but we could do this. We could post the site and say with a QR code saying that takes them to this e-permitting where they could look up the record and pull out the actual permit and see what's going on there. And see a tree fund. So tree funds have been talked about, and I think I've worked in places where they have the tree funds. The value from the Lake Forest Park perspective on the tree value fund is that that's usually done as kind of an ALUA process. So if they can't do it there on their site, is often done with a lot of commercial, is that, then they pay towards this fund. Well, I'm not a big fan personally of putting dollar amounts on those kind of things because I know the clientele here, and a lot of people would prefer just paying that amount than to replace trees or to. So if we can keep them replacing trees to the certain density that we require, whether it's a change in canopy or the size, I think that's the better option than to put it into a tree fund. Because the other side of that is we really just don't have that many places on public. We don't have a lot of public places we can put trees. As I showed you that right away, we don't have like a lot of communities in Idaho, they have 100-foot right-of-ways. I mean, you can put street trees, you can put things in those right-of-ways. Here, we have limited right-of-way and our infrastructure is there. And then we don't have that much park space where we can put trees if you talk to public works in the area. And so finally, a heritage tree program, which I know Jan's working on. And I think that's going through the Parks Committee right now. But a heritage tree program, what that usually is a voluntary program from private property owners. And then the city has a public side of things where they go and identify trees. And so that usually works in unison with a lot of what we just talked about. And a tree funding program can be used to fuel that and fund that. So that's another great thing about a tree fund program. So thank you. Any questions? I'm happy to answer questions.
Jeff?
Yeah.
I just forwarded you from our March meeting 8:30 to 10 on March 23rd. And I have the exact wording here. So I just
Super.
forwarded to you so you can review the 8-foot sidewalk and all the other things like the bathroom down by Haystack.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it because it's
Well, I
never
just
been in
forwarded
a
it right
document.
from the meeting that I came to for TSP. So it's been sent to you before, but I just resent it to you. So you can
Okay.
review it.
Super.
Page number and everything.
Thank you.
Jeff, you talk about legacy tree, 30 inches around. If it was on, for instance, the edge of the structure that was proposed to be built, how would you go about saving that legacy tree?
Well, what we would ask, or, if, in other words, if they're wanting to save legacy trees like if we, well, don't worry about it. If we go back to the one with the garage, for instance, or whatever, that would give him an incentive to, if he could save that tree and he got 600 square feet of extra FAR, he might save that tree. This is only saying that if we go to, reduced square footages as a, kind of it's a, what do you want to do? Talk about what you can do for your community. Well, if you're looking for what you're wanting, the positives you want to see and what you want to save, well, you're going to want to, it has to work with code audit, because I think the lot coverage is your very first thing that you have to have a new definition for. That lot coverage currently gives you this bonus, what I call a credit towards certain hardscape, and change that language, keep that at what it's currently is. But then when we move to the FARs, change that calculation so that you have smaller single family residences. But if they do certain things like this, then you can give incentive bonuses. So if they build and they keep the significant tree coverage, then they get a 600 square foot bonus.
But would that, some lots are small enough, so small that if you give them an extra 600 feet,
only in the
then you have setback problems.
Only in the FAR. So that's what we're saying. We're not changing their lot coverage, right?
Okay. But
so something like that. I haven't done the actual calculation, but I think something like that is what, is a route forward to trying to figure out how to save some of that significant tree coverage, or what I was calling legacy tree.
I really like the idea of a depth of definitions.
Yeah.
I think that's something we really need. And that could be in a tree program, but it should be in the ordinance also. So when we get to that part, I think you highlighted to me one of the aspects I was trying to address is the fact we're working with the rules we got now. We need to change the rules so they're clear and concise and operable for staff to understand how the community feels about trees. Right now, I think the intent was there when they wrote the rules, whenever they wrote them, and they kept adding and taking away and all that kind of stuff. So that's a situation we're in. Yes, in some cases it works, and others it doesn't, because you're losing a nice big tree next door or something like that. Obviously, that was my intent of trying to explain that. There have been a lot of situations. Wait, let me step back. Your photograph from 1960s, your opening photograph, was insightful because there are areas that we look at today and say, oh, there's no trees there. Well, there were no trees there then. In fact, actually, we've planted some, especially in the more commercial areas. Probably not the right ones, but we planted some. I think that's another part of the program that we need to really define is when we do ask for a replacement, we need to define what the replacement is better. Because I think we've missed some really good opportunities in planting better, more regional trees and stuff like that. Your floor area ratio concept is one I'd like to study. I think that's one we should really talk about, and maybe there's other avenues that are similar to that. The idea of giving the administrative 50%, whatever. That one actually gives me more enticement as a designer to maybe wiggle things around a little bit. So if I've got some gray areas that I could scoot to get away from a drip line or something like that, that would really help. I do feel like the value of a tree should be placed, and I think we should have that also. And I think that should be exponential to the size of the tree.
Yeah, it's usually is by a diameter or something.
Yeah, but it gets, if you get up to a point where you're cutting down a 48, 5-foot tree, something like that, you're gonna pay a wad to cut that critter down, unless it's obviously dying and we can prove that, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's other things I'll mention, but, the one little note that I have found finding the actual documents for damn near everything we do really hard sometimes, because we are required as a city to show what we've talked about in the past. So sometimes it's really hard to decipher. I've gotten accustomed to it, kind of know where I'm supposed to go, but in some cases, it's very hard to figure out what is the actual document compared to what is the one that's been discussed in the process of coming to it. So I'm not saying that's an excuse for finding what's current and what's not, but.
No, and the other thing is that lots of browsers, you'll have a cache memory, and it will cache memory the older version. And so often people will have that older version and think that that's the document. It's not. Like you said, we're working from a new edition, the 21st. So.
And the other thing, especially about the TSP, is this is a work in progress. The actual final thing that gets the most debate and all that kind of stuff is when it comes to the city, when it comes to the council. Planning commission is going to take it up now. They're going to hassle over a whole bunch of stuff. They'll change it probably many times before it even comes to us. Quite likely that we're going to change it. Maybe not. Depends on how it gets to there. I have actually personally avoided reading the TSP because I know it comes to the council in a more final presentation. So I'm just letting people know that this is a long ways yet to go on what is concluded about paving or trees or stop signs and all that kind of stuff. I'm done talking. Mike?
I've read the TSP, and I read it as, I think, well thought out document of options that have been tried and proven in other areas, with a focus on, over and over, you said, maintaining the village character. That's used over and over. You see that line. And it's just a list for the next 20 years. Here's some options that are available for the city council to consider and if needed. Never really had a plan. So there's nothing in that says this is what we're going to do. It says here are a number of options. These are ideas that work. They've worked in other places. Some of them they've thrown out, even though he said this isn't likely for Planet Beach. Other things they say might very well work, but it's going to be up to the city. That means the staff, planning commission, the council saying, yes, that's what we want. And we don't have to make a decision today or tomorrow. And we will be looking at this whole document, this recommendation, this report. And here's some items that I think really address a current need. Let's have a discussion, a work session. Does this something make sense? And begin to develop at that point. The idea of the long-term plan is you don't want to do something today and then realize in 5, 10 years, oh, yeah, we didn't think about that. Now we got to tear it all out. So it gives you a long-term view to focus on what your current needs are. So getting all excited about this plan, it's maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's not been called a plan, but a study. But it is. That's what the state calls it.
Yeah. And you know, it's a 20-year horizon, right? And I think you put it correctly. It gives you tools in a toolbox, and you can select those tools going forward. Even just like with the TSP, it's also a form of leverage, right? And just like we put $22,000, but got back from the state $130,000. You know, so that's what it does. It says, well, this is the avenue we want to go. We want further study on this. We want to do this, prioritize that over the next 2 years. Then you go out and you do that, you leverage that and get the funding to do that. So that's where I want to see it. And, you know, I don't care if you haven't read, just like you said, Sam, anything so far. Yeah, just read the latest one, because that's the one that's up for adoption. And so, you know, we'll send it out and post it as many places we can.
Yeah.
I don't have, how many open houses have we had? And
total?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've had 4 open houses, 4 PAC meetings, and then, you know, the live online open houses and the surveys and all of that. And
surveys have gone out. So I tried to gather a lot of input.
Yeah.
For our consultants to look at and for ourselves to look at.
Yeah.
And they're trying to compile these and make give us a package of options for us to consider over the 20-year horizon.
Yeah.
It was mentioned earlier that a really good example just happened with the water resiliency. The master plan for the water stuff was, what, 8 years ago?
Close to it, yeah.
That's how long this takes before something gets paved or something gets dug up. And this kind of thing. And I'm also gonna, I don't want to, but I'm also gonna mention the strategic plan that we did, what, 12 years ago? Very little of that has actually come into fruition because we've created more focused plans that have helped come up with better ideas, like the master plan for the water. So I guess I am looking forward to the 10th to find out what the 3 bodies discuss on the same thing, same kind of ideas, and hopefully focus on your suggestions. Because I think there's some there that in the code work that we're going to be addressing relates to other things. Because what we do with trees are going to affect the FARs or vice versa. So there's some really interesting playing pieces there that we can shuffle around.
I'm glad we're doing it basically all at one time.
Yeah.
Because they are interwoven.
Yeah.
By doing it that way, we can do the problem in one and we may solve that one and create a problem in the other.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
We could also create some more RFPs for Bruce to create.
Yeah, but now you have to read them.
He didn't want to do that.
How many people actually took the survey?
The latest one?
Yes.
I think last count, I think it's 30 or something like that. We'll have that at the next, at the work session.
Okay, because I'd heard 15.
And I think it's like 33 or something last time I heard. So we'll have those numbers at the work session on the 10th next week.
It's too late now to do it?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, I don't think there's been a let's take it down email or I think it's probably still up, but.
It isn't still up. You had to send me the link.
Well, I mean, it's live. It's just, we closed it down off of our Cannon Beach TSP site, but it's still up as a survey. We just haven't, because we said a date was 28th. We said that for a month and a half. So that's why we put that date. But I mean, if we want to still extend it, we can always extend.
I think it's important to have a hard date for surveys. just because that examples a set of time parameter. If you want to have another survey, do another one.
Well, anyone can still comment. Anyone still can email us, whatever you want to say. Feel free to say it. And, that's the whole thing, I prefer the public comments coming to us, instead of social media. It's a public comment for you guys to review, our planning commission to review. Put that in writing and put it in public record.
Anybody else? No more? Okay, thank you all for listening, and thanks, Jeff, for.
Thank you.
Slides. Oops, my thing's quit here, hang on. I believe we're at the end. So I will go for informational items. Any reports or communications? We have the 18th for the inter-county meeting.
Yeah, the countywide elected officials fairgrounds from 5 to 7. There's also the League of Oregon Cities meeting, which is going to be the 6th at 11 at Bay City.
Right. We have our executive session.
So if now's the appropriate time, I have a comment about that. So we have 2 hours scheduled for the second executive session. And the point of this executive session is for the council and Bruce to have a discussion about the city manager evaluation. 2 hours seems like maybe more time than we need for that discussion. So you tell me, but it seems like an hour might be sufficient.
I'd rather go with the 2 hours. I mean, if hour is fine, then we have an extra hour, but I don't want to feel like we're being hurried.
I agree.
This is easy to cut it off. We don't have any other meeting.
No, so it would be, I believe our executive session starts at 4. So if we end at 5, we'll just have a gap of an hour between then and when the work session starts. And if that's okay with everybody, then that works for me as well.
Okay.
And I believe works for Bruce.
That's the 10th, right?
The 10th.
Yeah. Works for me. Okay. I have no communication, so anything for good of the order.
Something. First of all, thank you to everybody who was able to make the meeting at the meeting that was at the Cannon Beach Elementary. They got a lot of good information. We should have the notes from that meeting coming up. So we'll get that to you. That was called Community Outreach Event. Okay, the next community outreach event we have scheduled is on the 11th. And we have scheduled that to be an event here for people that are here and then also on Zoom.
May 11th?
Yes,
Okay, because we have the budget meeting too.
yes, it's a long day.
What time is it? What time is it?
6.
Because I-
6 o'clock.
6.
So we have that one. Now, there's just tentatively scheduled for 7th. I thought maybe we'll have a discussion on the 11th because we have the option to do another live event at the Cannon Beach Elementary. Or we can do it if you wanted to do it on the 27th in the morning, if we want to try to move it to a weekend, whatever, but that was the 3 events that we talked about having.
I've had some interactions with some people that were regretting they missed seeing the buildings and being and giving comment, but
yeah,
I think it would be really beneficial to do the 3rd one on site if possible.
It's a Friday, Sam. Do you have a preference for what time of the day?
No, but I was dumbfounded how good of reception we got. Maybe a little later in the day. I don't know. I don't. So let's talk about that on the 11th.
So the
Okay, I just,
27th.
it can be a little problematic to get things done on a Friday.
On Friday.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. Evening. Or we don't have lights.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
It wouldn't matter if it was,
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock. 6.
Do you want to do it like 5 o'clock on a Saturday? Want to do it like during the week? And we can talk about it later. I'm sorry. I just want to introduce the idea that, you know how we're going to do the second one. Third one's up in the air, depending on how we want it to go. And we'll make anything like that work.
It sure helped to have a date though, because this week's, our month's pretty full.
Yeah.
disappearing rapidly.
Would you like to go to the 28th, which is the Saturday?
Doesn't matter to me. I just want to put it down.
Just a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Is that Memorial Day Saturday?
It's Memorial Day weekend, yes.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Friday's not good, but I'd rather Friday, I think. Just because of that.
We can think about what time during the day.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's stick with the Friday right now.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question about something in our informational packet. It says, this is under the other planning and building matters, kind of the list of things that the CD department did. And it says the CD department posted the RFP for the shoreline drone project.
Yeah.
What is that?
We wanted to do like an annual or biannual fly over the city, the beach. And we, you have to have somebody that is a licensed drone pilot, that kind of thing. And permits to be in the vicinity of the rock. So that's what that's about.
So is it going to be within, I mean, because there is a barrier in terms of drones being prohibited to fly within a certain number of feet from the rock. Is
Right, we can probably get permission to, because of the type of work that we're doing, we would probably be able to go ahead and fly that. And we might do it in a time of the year that the rock is not that busy.
And well, I'm thinking of birds.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but
After they've pledged.
a lot of the birds have left. That's probably a time. But we want, we think we need more information on the coast and what's happening as far as, sand accretion, loss. And you really need to have that over years and you can kind of see trends, those sort of things. That's what that was about.
This is a technical survey type.
Yes. Yes.
Not a marketing promotion thing.
That was a good idea.
Just so everybody understands. Okay, then, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.